The morning my son told me I no longer had a say in my own life, he was eating my scrambled eggs. He had his father's jaw square, certain, and he said it the same way his father used to, when a conversation was already over before it began. He put his fork down, folded his hands, and said, "We've already made the decision, Mom. You can't live alone anymore. Not we think it might be time. Not we'd like to talk about options. Already made? Past tense? Done." I looked at him across the kitchen table I had owned for 31 years, the one with the burn mark near the corner from the Thanksgiving. My daughter Carol knocked over a candle, the one my husband Robert refinished himself the summer before he got sick. And I thought, he is sitting in this house that I own, eating eggs I cooked, and telling me my life has been decided. "I appreciate your concern," I said. I kept my voice level. My mother always said a woman who keeps her voice is a woman who keeps her power. "It's not concern, it's just reality," my son said. "You fell in February. You were alone for 6 hours. I twisted my ankle. I was watching television and icing it. You didn't call anyone. I didn't need anyone." My daughter-in-law Brenda came in from the hallway then. She had been standing just outside the doorframe. I had heard her low heels on the hardwood, that particular soft stop that means someone is listening without wanting to be seen listening. She sat down next to Michael and folded her hands the same way he had, and I understood this had been rehearsed. "Eleanor," she said, in the voice she used when she wanted to sound gentle, "we've looked into it. The guest room is right next to the bathroom. It's safe. It makes sense." "Whose sense?" I asked. Neither of them answered that. "I want to be honest with you, because I think honesty is the only thing worth offering at this point in a life." I was 72 years old. I had lived in my house on Clover Street for 28 years. I had painted every room myself at least twice. I knew which step creaked at night and which window let in the good air in July, and exactly how long to leave the percolator on before the coffee went bitter. I was not confused. I was not fragile. I had a bad ankle for 2 weeks in February, and I had been completely fine since. But I was also tired in a way that is hard to explain unless you have lived it. The tiredness of being a widow in a house that echoes, of cooking for one and eating at the table where 4 people used to sit, of waking at 3 in the morning with your hand on a side of the bed that has been cold for 9 years. I let myself be tired. That was my mistake. I agreed to a trial. 3 weeks, I said. Just to let my ankle finish healing, I told myself. Even though my ankle had been healed for months by then, I packed a bag. Michael carried it to his car with the particular satisfaction of a man who has accomplished something he set out to accomplish. And I stood on my porch and looked at my hydrangeas, the blue ones, Robert's favorites, and I told myself 3 weeks was nothing. 3 weeks was a blink. I did not know it was not going to be 3 weeks. Michael and Brenda's house was 40 minutes from mine, across the county line. It was a large house, which I had always thought they kept too cold. The guest room was indeed next to the bathroom, as promised. It had beige walls and a window that looked out onto the side of their fence. There was no chair to sit in, just the bed and a small table and a lamp with a shade the color of old teeth. They gave me meals at regular times. Brenda cooked well, I will give her that. But the food arrived at 5:30 whether I was hungry or not, and if I was not in the kitchen at 5:30, she would come to the doorway of the guest room and say, "Eleanor, it's ready," in the same tone she used for their Labrador. I had no car. Michael had driven me over, and my car was at Clover Street, and when I mentioned perhaps driving myself to the pharmacy, I had a prescription to pick up. Michael said he would handle it. He did bring the prescription. He brought it 3 days later, after I had asked twice more, and he set it on my bedside table without comment. My cell phone, I had left at home. I had not thought to bring it because I had thought this was 3 weeks and I would be back. I asked Michael if I could use his phone to call Carol. There was a pause before he answered. Not a long pause, maybe 2 seconds, but I have been reading pauses for 72 years and I know what a 2-second pause before answering a simple question means. Carol's been hard to reach, he said. She answers when I call, I said. I'll call her for you, he said. Let me find a good time. He never found a good time. I want you to understand something about that house. There was nothing cruel happening. Nothing that anyone could have pointed to and named. Brenda cooked good food, and Michael drove me to my doctor's appointment, and they watched television with me in the evenings and asked how I had slept. If I had tried to describe what was wrong to someone who wasn't living it, I would have sounded ungrateful. I would have sounded like a difficult old woman who didn't appreciate what her family was doing for her. But I knew. I had raised children. I knew the difference between care and management. And I was being managed. 3 weeks became 6 weeks. I asked about going home and Michael said, "Let's get through the spring." I asked again and Brenda said they had been having some work done on the house. A plumber had found something. The details were unclear and it wasn't quite ready. I nodded. I sat by the window with the view of the fence. I started sleeping badly. It was Ruth who saved me. Ruth Gaines, who had lived 2 houses down from me on Clover Street for 15 years, who walked her beagle past my porch every morning and had been doing so since before her husband passed. I had not thought to give Michael Ruth's number. I had not thought to give Michael anyone's number. I had brought my toothbrush and my blood pressure medication, and I had thought it was 3 weeks. Ruth, I learned later, had noticed my car sitting in the driveway for 6 weeks without moving. She had knocked twice and gotten no answer. She was not a woman who let things go. She called my son. Michael told her I was staying with him while I recovered from my fall. Ruth told him my fall had been in February and it was now June. There was another pause, longer than 2 seconds. Ruth asked for my number at Michael's house. Michael gave her the main line. He did not give her the number for the phone in the guest room, because there was no phone in the guest room. But Ruth called the main line and Brenda answered, and Ruth said she was an old friend and asked if she could speak with me. And Brenda, who could not think of a reason to say no without it sounding like a reason, put me on. It was the first real conversation I had had with anyone outside that house in 6 weeks. I sat on the little stool in the hallway with the phone cord stretched to its full length, and I listened to Ruth's voice, and I felt something in my chest that I can only describe as a window opening. "Eleanor," Ruth said, "are you all right?" I looked down the hallway toward the kitchen, where I could hear Brenda moving things. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm fine. It's been a longer visit than I expected." "I've been walking past your house," Ruth said. I waited. "There was a man with a clipboard last Tuesday," she said, "and 2 couples went through on Thursday afternoon. A woman with a folder was writing things down." I was quiet for a moment. I could hear the refrigerator opening and closing in the kitchen. "Eleanor," Ruth said again, quietly. "Are you hearing me?" I heard her. I had been hearing something beneath the surface of the last 6 weeks, and I had been telling myself I was wrong, that I was being paranoid, that my son, who I had brought into this world, who I had taught to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk on Clover Street, who had sat on the porch and eaten the first tomatoes from Robert's garden every August. I had been telling myself that my son was not doing what I was now understanding he was doing. "I hear you," I said. My voice was steady. My mother would have been proud. "The woman with the folder," Ruth said. "She had a Century 21 sign in her car." I thanked Ruth. I told her I would call her back. I told her the number for Michael's cell phone, which I had memorized because it was the number I was supposed to call in case of emergency, and I asked her to look something up for me, the name of a real estate attorney, someone good. Ruth said she knew exactly who to call. Ruth had handled her own estate after her husband died, and she was not a woman who forgot the names of people who had helped her. I hung up the phone. I sat on the stool in the hallway for a moment, with my hands folded in my lap. I thought about Robert. I thought about the way he used to say that the best move in any game was the one your opponent didn't see coming. Robert had been a chess player. I had always preferred cards. Brenda called me for dinner at 5:30. I went. I ate the chicken she had made, which was good. I complimented it. I asked Michael about his work, which I had not done in several weeks, and he brightened slightly and talked about a project he was managing. I listened. I asked follow-up questions. I was, to all appearances, a pleasant, elderly woman, having a pleasant dinner with her family. Inside, I was counting. The next morning, Michael left for work at 7:45. Brenda left for her book club at 9:15. She went every other Thursday, and this was a Thursday. I had noticed, over 6 weeks, that the spare car key, the one for Brenda's Subaru, hung on a hook just inside the coat closet, on the right side, behind the winter jackets. I had noticed this the same way I had noticed everything in that house, quietly, without comment. The way you notice things when you understand that information might matter later. I am not a woman who acts without thinking, but I am also not a woman who, once she has thought, hesitates. I took the key. I drove to the county courthouse. I had not driven in 6 weeks, and my hands were tight on the wheel for the first 10 minutes. And then I remembered that I had been driving for 54 years, and I relaxed. I did not go to a real estate attorney first. I went to the county recorder's office. There are things you can find out about your own property that you may not know you can find out, quickly and for free, simply by asking the right person at the right desk. I found out that my house on Clover Street was currently listed with a real estate agency. I found out the listing agent's name. I found out the asking price. I sat with that number for a moment. It was not an unfair price for the house. Robert had kept it up well before he died, and I had kept it up after. The hydrangeas alone probably added something to the curb appeal. Then I found out one more thing. 2 months prior, a power of attorney document had been filed under my name, designating Michael as my legal representative for financial and property decisions. I sat very still. I thought back 2 months. I thought about the afternoon Michael had brought a folder of papers to the guest room and said they were insurance documents, continuity paperwork, things the accountant needed to have in order. I had signed where he pointed. I had not read carefully. I had been tired, and it was late in the afternoon, and I trusted my son the way you trust the people you raised, the way you trust the ground beneath your feet, right up until the moment it moves. I drove to the office of a man named Gerald Callahan, whose name Ruth had given me through a text to Michael's cell phone, which Ruth had sent at 9:17 and which I had seen and deleted before Brenda got home from book club the previous Thursday. Mr. Callahan was 68 years old, recently semi-retired, and he had the particular patience of a man who had heard a great many things in his professional life and had learned not to show surprise. I sat across his desk and told him what I knew. I showed him the printout from the recorder's office that I had asked the county clerk to make for me. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Mrs. Eleanor, the power of attorney can be revoked. Today, if you want." "I want," I said. "There is also the matter of the listing," he said. "If the property is listed without your current consent, is there a buyer?" I asked. He made a phone call. He had contacts. It took 11 minutes to determine that an offer had been made 2 days prior and had not yet been accepted. 11 minutes, 2 days. I thought about what might have happened if Ruth had not walked her beagle. I thought about what would have happened if I had not memorized Michael's cell number. I thought about that stool in the hallway and the window with the view of the fence and all the 5:30 dinners, and I sat with it for a moment, and then I put it away because there was work to do, and I intended to do it. We revoked the power of attorney. Mr. Callahan drafted a letter to the listing agent withdrawing the property from sale. I signed both documents with a pen from a holder on Mr. Callahan's desk that said "World's Best Grandpa," which I thought about for a moment. I asked if I could use his phone to call my daughter. Carol answered on the second ring. I want to tell you about Carol because she deserves to be told about. Carol was 43 and lived in Portland, and we had been estranged, if that is the right word, which I am not sure it is, for 4 years, over a disagreement, about a disagreement, about a previous disagreement, the way these things calcify over time until you cannot remember exactly where it started, only that it hurts. Michael had positioned himself, over those 4 years, as the reasonable child, the present one, the one who showed up. I had let him, because guilt is a powerful thing, and I had believed, for 4 years, that he was simply the better child. When Carol heard my voice, she said, "Mom?" in a tone that had everything in it. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. She was quiet for a second. Then, "Are you okay? Where are you calling from?" "A lawyer's office," I said. Another silence. Then Carol laughed, a short, surprised sound. "Of course you are," she said. "Are you in trouble?" "I was," I said. "I don't think I am anymore." She flew in the next day. I had not seen my daughter in 4 years, and she came through the arrival doors at the airport, with her hair shorter than I remembered, and her eyes the same as they had always been, her father's eyes, careful and brown, and she hugged me in the middle of the terminal for a long time, without saying anything, and I held on. Michael found out when I didn't come back to the guest room that night. He called Brenda, and Brenda called the main line of Mr. Callahan's office, and the answering service told her the office was closed. He called my cell phone, which Carol had retrieved from my house on Clover Street along with my car and most of my things. I let it ring. I watched Carol's face watch me let it ring, and something between us that had been locked for 4 years began, quietly, to open. I went home. It sounds simple when I say it that way. But I want you to understand what it meant to walk through my front door after 6 weeks in that guest room with the beige walls and the lamp with the old teeth shade. Carol had aired out the house and bought groceries. She had always remembered what I kept in the kitchen, better than Michael ever had. And the hydrangeas were in full bloom, blue and heavy, and I stood on my porch in the June afternoon and breathed. "Okay?" Carol said behind me. "More than okay," I said. Michael came 2 days later. He sat in the living room, in the same chair he had always sat in as a boy. And I sat across from him, and we had the conversation that we probably should have had a long time ago, not about the house. About everything before the house, about the years his father was sick, and the years after, and the way grief makes people do things they don't examine closely enough. About what he had told himself he was doing, and what he had actually done. About the difference between those two things. I will not tell you that it was resolved cleanly. It was not. There are things that will take time, and some things that may never be entirely repaired, and I am at the age where I do not pretend otherwise. But I told him, clearly and without cruelty, what he had taken from me and what I intended to take back. I told him that whatever his justifications had been, what he had done was a name, elder financial abuse, that it was a crime, that I had a very good attorney, and that what happened next was up to him. He did not say much. He sat in his father's chair and looked at his hands. He is still his father's jaw and his father's certainty. But there was something else in the room that day, something smaller in him, and I found that I did not feel satisfied by it the way I had expected to. I felt something quieter. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something that might become forgiveness. Eventually, if we are both careful with it. Brenda did not come. I have not spoken to Brenda. Carol stayed for 3 weeks. We cooked together every evening, the way we used to when she was in high school, and it was just the two of us waiting for Robert to get home from work. I made my oatmeal cookies. I add extra cardamom, a trick my own mother taught me, and Carol sat on the counter the way she always had, and stole the dough and talked to me about her life, her real life, the one I had missed 4 years of. I told her about mine. We talked about Robert the way you can finally talk about someone. Once the sharpest part of the grief has passed, with love and humor, and the specific tenderness of people who miss the same person. Mr. Callahan sent a formal notification to Michael regarding the unauthorized listing. Whether Michael and Brenda pursue any further legal matter is something I have placed in the hands of people better equipped to handle it than I am. What I have kept in my own hands is the house, the car, the power of attorney restored, now, to my own name, and the slow, deliberate work of rebuilding what matters. Ruth brought me a casserole the Saturday after I came home. She sat on the porch with me, and we drank iced tea, and her beagle slept at our feet, and she told me she had known something was wrong when she saw that car sitting in my driveway. I told her she was the most important person in this story, and she said, characteristically, that she had simply been paying attention. Paying attention, she said, is what neighbors are for. I have been thinking about that. About the things we pay attention to, and the things we let slide. About the signatures I put on papers without reading them, and the questions I didn't ask, and the ways in which I had let myself believe that being cared for and being controlled were the same thing. They are not the same thing. I know that now in a way I did not know it 6 weeks ago, and I intend to hold on to it. Some mornings I sit on the porch with my coffee before the heat sets in, and I look at the hydrangeas and I think about Robert. I think about what he would have said if I had called him from that guest room with the fence view, if calling him had been possible. If any of that were possible. I think he would have said, because this is what Robert always said in the moments that called for it, that the best move is the one your opponent doesn't see coming. I think he would have been proud of me. I water the hydrangeas twice a week. They are doing very well this year. Better than last year. Better than they have in a long time. There is something that happens to a plant when it has been neglected and then returned to it, does not simply recover. It often comes back stronger than before, as though it had been waiting for the right conditions and had spent that time building something invisible, underground. I think about that when I water them. I think about invisible things, built underground, while the surface stays quiet. I am 72 years old. I have signed my name back onto my own life. I have my daughter back, my house back, my keys on the hook by the front door where they belong. The coffee percolator knows exactly how long it needs. The third step still creaks. The window in the bedroom still lets in the good air in July. I am home,